Those who seek to blame others are themselves the problem, and we will have zero patience or tolerance of that.
Work in accordance with the will of the people, which is literally how democracies are supposed to work, but they work instead on
petition that's currently
Your approval
online
ratings have dropped.
1.9 people who want the election to go again.
Million. It's now
is it 2 million now?
It's now just over 2.
Did you know Keir Starmer's approval rating is now lower than Nigel Farage's? That's right. The Labour leader who once promised to unite the country has somehow become less popular than the Brexit champion he previously opposed. And in this video we'll break down how Russell Brand highlighted Starmer's collapsing popularity on live TV and what that signals for the future of British politics. Because the statistics and quotes are genuinely startling and reveal just how disconnected Starmer has become from the very people he claims to represent. When Keir Starmer took the helm of the Labour Party in April 2020, he was widely seen as a breath of fresh air, with his polished demeanour and legal background offering hope of a return to competent opposition after years of Jeremy Corbyn's divisive leadership. And his early approval ratings surged as many voters viewed him as a prime minister in waiting. But how the mighty have fallen. Recent polling now paints a bleak picture for the once promising Labour leader, with a YouGov survey from last month showing Starmer's net approval rating has sunk to -45, lower than Boris Johnson's even at the height of the Partygate scandal. And more astonishing still, Starmer now trails behind Nigel Farage in public approval, a reality that would have seemed unthinkable just a year ago.
Disorder, clearly whipped up online, that is also a crime. It's happening on your premises.
Well, I see now as well that, after all of the arguments last week about the farming tax and the inheritance tax, that Keir Starmer actually coming out and saying that BBC verified.
What's behind this dramatic fall from grace? Political analysts point to a growing list of missteps and broken promises that have steadily eroded public trust, with Starmer's flip-flopping on key issues like Brexit and his apparent lack of a clear vision for the country leaving many voters feeling disillusioned. Take, for example, Starmer's handling of the NHS crisis. Despite repeatedly promising to make the health service his top priority, he has been criticised for offering little more than polished soundbites in the face of record-breaking waiting lists and severe staff shortages. And his failure to set out a detailed, credible plan for NHS reform has led many to question whether he is truly committed to meaningful change. Then there is the issue of Starmer's stance on workers' rights. Once a trade union lawyer, he was widely expected to be a strong and vocal champion of the working class.
the Anglophonic countries, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, etc., all give one another each other's domestic data to bypass laws that prevent governments spying on their domestic population.
This petition will result in nothing. They've got a huge majority of over 400. Doesn't force them to an election, but does get them a debate.
His refusal to back recent strikes and his lukewarm support for union action have alienated core Labour supporters, with one union leader famously quipping that Starmer couldn't find his backbone with both hands and a map. But perhaps the most damaging issue of all has been his perceived lack of authenticity. Starmer's attempt to rebrand himself as a patriotic centrist figure has struck many voters as calculated and insincere. And as one political commentator put it, Starmer seems to be trying on personalities like ill-fitting suits, with the public seeing straight through the act. This widening gap between Starmer's promises and his actions has created a perfect storm of public discontent, a situation ripe for critique. And who better to deliver that critique than the sharp-tongued Russell Brand? As we'll see in the next segment, Brand's confrontation with Starmer on live TV exposed these contradictions in brutal fashion, with the comedian turned political commentator pulling no punches as he laid bare the Labour leader's failures for all to see. But before diving into that explosive encounter, consider this. If Starmer can't withstand the scrutiny of a former MTV presenter, how can he possibly hope to lead the country through its current crisis? I mean,
Nigel Farage is one of the most popular politicians in the country. That's why millions of people voted for him and his party at the last election.
This is also a moment to apologise once again to all those who were hurt, to all those who were let down, who no longer felt it was their home.
Keir Starmer walked into what he thought would be a routine interview, only to find himself face to face with Russell Brand. armed with a list of broken promises and ready to strike. The moment Brand's first question hung in the air, Starmer's confident facade began to crack, and what followed would send shockwaves through British politics and across social media. The stage was set for an unlikely showdown: the polished Labour leader versus the outspoken comedian turned political commentator. Brand, known for his rapid-fire wit and anti-establishment views, had built a significant following through his YouTube channel and podcast, and his transformation from Hollywood bad boy to political pundit had surprised many. Yet his sharp critiques of the status quo resonated deeply with a growing audience of disillusioned voters. As the cameras rolled, the studio buzzed with tension. Brand, eyes gleaming with determination, leaned forward while Starmer, initially composed, shifted uncomfortably, realising this was no typical softball interview. Brand wasted no time, questioning Starmer's leadership style and pressing him on the glaring disconnect between his promises and the people he claims to represent. "You say you stand for the working class," Brand challenged, "yet you've consistently failed to support recent strikes. How do you explain this contradiction to your core supporters?"
Surely they'd be interested to see that there is so much disdain and disgust rising up across the nation.
Terms of Parliament in the UK 5 years, in Victoria's case 4 years, a good thing, or would it be better to go back to the old system?
Starmer's response was defensive and evasive. He tried to downplay public dissatisfaction, insisting that there will be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place. This dismissive attitude only seemed to fuel Brand's interrogation. As the debate intensified, Brand presented evidence of Starmer's flip-flopping on major issues like Brexit and NH reform, citing specific broken promises that left Starmer visibly flustered. The Labour leader's body language betrayed his discomfort. He shifted in his seat, avoided direct eye contact, and repeatedly reached for his water glass. The confrontation reached its peak when Brand tackled Starmer's perceived lack of authenticity. "You've tried on so many political personas," Brand quipped. "The public doesn't know who the real Keir Starmer is anymore. How can you lead a country when you can't even decide who you are?" The pointed question left Starmer momentarily speechless. A rare sight for the usually articulate politician, the studio audience, initially quiet, began to murmur as the weight of Brand's critique sank in. The interview's impact was immediate and far-reaching. Social media exploded with reactions, many praising Brand's boldness while criticising Starmer's evasiveness, and clips of the heated exchanges went viral, further damaging Starmer's already fragile public image. Political analysts were quick to weigh in, suggesting that Brand's public dressing down could energise disillusioned voters and potentially reshape political discourse in the UK. As the dust settled on this unexpected clash, one thing became clear: the political landscape in Britain was shifting, and Brand's ability to challenge Starmer so effectively raised questions about whether outsiders like him might now hold more sway over public opinion than established political figures.
Only just gotten into power, and he is absolutely loathed. Here is Keir Starmer, democracy harmer, being confronted with the fact of his own unpopularity.
I'm not surprised that many of them want a rerun. That isn't how our system works. There would be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place.
Brand's confrontation exposed cracks in Starmer's polished facade, but it barely scratched the surface of a deeper controversy brewing behind the scenes. Whispers of a globalist stooge were growing louder. What evidence did Brand have to back up this damning claim, and how might it reshape voter perceptions of the Labour leader? Globalism, the idea of prioritising international cooperation over national interests, has become a hot-button issue in UK politics, with critics arguing it can erode sovereignty and neglect local concerns. Brand's accusation that Starmer is a globalist stooge taps directly into these fears, suggesting the Labour leader is more aligned with elite international interests than with the British working class. While Starmer's public statements frequently emphasise national priorities and British values, Brand highlights a perceived disconnect between these words and Starmer's actions. The comedian-turned-commentator even went so far as to suggest that Starmer's leadership is steering the UK toward becoming the latest colony on the prison planet, a provocative claim implying a surrender of national autonomy to global powers. This alleged globalist agenda becomes particularly visible when examining some of Starmer's policy positions, his support for ongoing ties with the EU post-Brexit, despite Labour's official stance of respecting the referendum result, continues to raise eyebrows and fuel the narrative Brand is pushing.
Pensioners, 10 million of them, who will be shivering in their homes this winter. Well, frankly, they already are. How cold has it been this weekend?
I will defend our decisions in the budget all day long. I will defend facing up to the harsh light of fiscal reality.
Starmer's reluctance to back recent strikes and his perceived softness on immigration also feed into the globalist narrative of prioritising international harmony over domestic concerns. Experts warn that this kind of globalist approach can have serious consequences for local governance. As one political analyst notes, when leaders focus on appeasing international bodies, they risk losing touch with the needs of their own constituents, a top-down strategy that can leave voters feeling voiceless and ignored. The implications of these revelations for Labour's electoral prospects could be significant. Many traditional Labour supporters in working-class communities already feel abandoned by the party, and if Brand's accusations gain traction, support in these key battlegrounds could erode even further. As news of Brand's critique spreads, voter reactions remain mixed but increasingly sceptical of Starmer's leadership, with social media abuzz with debates over the Labour leader's true allegiances. One Twitter user neatly captured the growing sentiment.
Right now, they're saying, we need to protect you, so we have to censor you. We need to protect you, so we have to throw people in jail. But
You want us, the public, to trust you, to like you, to think he's the man for the job, he's doing what he needs to do. Your approval rating is lower than Nigel Farage's, right?
Starmer cares more about Davos than Doncaster. How can he claim to represent us? The potential consequences for Labour are stark. If Starmer cannot convincingly refute these globalist accusations, he risks alienating the very voters the party needs to reclaim power. The party that once prided itself on being the voice of the working class could increasingly be seen as the party of the global elite. As pressure mounts, all eyes are on Starmer. How will he respond to these damaging allegations? And can he bridge the growing divide between his international outlook and the local concerns of Labour's traditional base? The answers to these questions may well determine the party's future and shape the course of British politics for years to come. Meanwhile, as Starmer grapples with accusations of globalism, another, perhaps more insidious charge is gaining traction. Critics argue that the Labour leader's style is not merely disconnected, it borders on authoritarian. But what evidence supports this claim? And how might it affect the future of British democracy?
And if we all carry on signing the petition, we can be arrested because it's antisocial. What a load of shit.
The pub industry, just small businesses in general, was extremely concerned about the way that the budget was rolled out, about the way it was lied to for him to get into power.
The erosion of democratic principles in UK politics isn't new, but under Starmer's leadership, it has taken on a troubling new dimension. His decisions often reflect a preference for top-down control rather than grassroots engagement, a stark departure from Labour's traditional values. Take, for example, Starmer's handling of internal party matters. He has repeatedly dismissed or sidelined members who disagree with his centrist approach. When left-wing MPs raised concerns about his policy direction, Starmer's response was not to engage in debate, but to remove the party whip, effectively silencing dissent. This heavy-handed approach has left many Labour supporters feeling voiceless and frustrated. Starmer's authoritarian tendencies become even clearer when contrasted with Labour's historical commitment to democratic principles. The party once prided itself on being a broad church, where diverse opinions were not only tolerated but encouraged. Today, under Starmer's leadership, that inclusive spirit appears to have evaporated. Perhaps most concerning are the instances where Starmer has dismissed public opinion outright. Most notably when polls showed overwhelming support for nationalising energy companies amidst soaring bills.
I believe in free speech and I believe in people's right to self-determination and governance. And when you say that, that means you're going to hear stuff you don't agree with and you're going to...
I think charging older people on the edge of winter more for their heating was a sign of a Labor Party that's got...
Starmer flatly rejected the idea, seemingly placing his own agenda above the will of the people. And this growing disconnect between leadership and public sentiment is a troubling sign for a party that claims to represent the many, not the few. The historical context makes Starmer's approach even more jarring. Labour has long relied on grassroots democracy. From the trade union movement to community organising, a bottom-up system crucial in shaping policy and keeping the party connected to its base. Starmer's leadership style, by contrast, treats this grassroots engagement more as a hindrance than an asset.